Thanks for clicking on the video. Here on our Mimic, we are going to review an old game book from the 1980s. This is Advanced Dungeons & Dragons Adventure Gamebook number 17, titled Spawn the Dragonspear, published by TSR back in 1988, and is authored by Steve Perrin. I realize many of you may not even know that this type of thing even exists, let alone a Advanced Dungeons & Dragons version. I'll tell you more about it in a bit, but before we even talk about the book, I need to talk about the origin of the book. And then after that, I'll talk to you about my impressions of the book, the review basically, and then we'll get into the plot specifics. So of course there will be heavy spoilers later on, so be warned. You might notice something interesting on the top of the cover here. It says a Forgotten Realms adventure, which it actually is. In fact, it's the very first Forgotten Realms product that is not a module. So I know D&D is heading towards a franchise model nowadays. You could think of it as this is the first franchise product featuring Forgotten Realms setting. I mentioned that this was published in 1988. You know what was published 1 year prior to this? This particular adventure, which we went over in the past. This is N5, and it's actually the very first Forgotten Realms campaign adventure. And you might also know something else interesting about the cover. Not only does it feature wonderful art by Keith Parkinson that did the cover of the book, but also who's the author of this adventure? It's the same author, Steve Perrin. Steve Perrin is not only author, but he's also a game designer and one of the chief architects for the Forgotten Realms setting that we all know and love, and it's arguably the most popular campaign setting for D&D ever created. This introductory campaign adventure takes place in Daggerford, which actually is the same setting as the game book, and some of the characters in here are actually in the game book as well. If you want to learn more about this adventure, I have a complete breakdown of this module, as well as about 30 plus other modules on a playlist you could check on our channel page. So let's get this out of the way and let's focus on the book now. So what is a AD&D adventure game book? Well, you can think of it as a mixture between the more popular Endless Quest books as well as fighting fantasy. So dice rolling is involved. I would eventually like to do a complete retrospective of all of these game books, for which there were 18 of them, and we have them all here in the library. However, it does take time to go and read through all of these, as I did make a retrospective on the Endless Quest books. I did the first half of them, 16 of them, and boy, that took a long time, and I'm still working on part 2. So I don't know when that would be published, but I'm still working on it. So why are we featuring this title right now? Well, as you may know, we do monthly giveaways, and we actually have an extra copy that is our giveaway this month. It features an intact bookmark and clean spine. I'll tell you more about this book, and if you really want to learn more about it, you can have your own copy to read. Welcome to the channel where we munch on multiple literary things, from board games to D&D, comic books to toys, video games on Saturdays, and gamer snacks on Sundays. We also do monthly giveaways, and this is our giveaway for the current month of November. It's an authentic rare 1980s Advanced Dungeons & Dragons game book with an intact bookmark and clean spine, and it's not even written in. I'll put a link down below how you can win this awesome prize. If you're watching this from the future, I'm sorry you missed out. You can click our channel page for our current giveaway. And if you do enjoy the video you're about to watch, hopefully consider hitting that like and subscribe. It's free to you and helps us out on the channel. Thanks for watching. Before we get into the mechanics of the book and how to do combat, let's get the book out of the protected bag and appreciate the cover. So this cover, as I mentioned earlier, is done by Keith Parkinson, who is one of my favorite D&D artists. This cover is not unique for this book. In fact, it was created for the Forgotten Realms campaign setting box set, which came out a year prior. So the character depicted here is not related to the actual story. In fact, you play a half-elven ranger armed with a sword and bow and arrow. Let's take a look at the back of the book, and you'll get a sense of what this is involved by the blurb. Now you can experience all the thrills of playing the Advanced Dungeons & Dragons game by yourself in book form. AD&D adventure game books use a simple, unique role-playing game system based on the popular AD&D game, incorporating 2 standard 6-sided dice not included, as well as hit points, skill points, experience points, and more. So yes and no. I'll tell you more about that in a bit. Let's move on. In Spawn of Dragonspear, you, Kelson Dark Treader, must discover the source of the evil emanating from the dread Dragonspear castle and put an end to it once and for all. As you saw with my demonstration with other copy, there is a bookmark in here, and it features the name of the character, your class, ranger, your age, 55, and various stats here. You got stats for fighting, archery, physical prowess, sensory, stealth, and experience points. And you have a set amount of hit points. These are the base numbers, and you can see there's a plus here. So with these stats up here, you have a pool of 10 points that you could distribute to any of these. You have to have a minimum of 1 to each of these and a maximum limit of 4 to one of these stats. For experience points, you can roll a single-sided dice and add that to your total value. And same thing with hit points. You roll a 6-sided dice and add that to your total hit points to get your final total. All right, so let's talk more about the mechanics of the book. Before you get too excited, I would say this book series is more skewed towards the basic Endless Quest series rather than the more advanced and combat-heavy fighting fantasy series. Even though you have all these stats, these are basically used for ability checks and not for actual direct combat like in fighting fantasy, where you keep on rolling against an opponent and try to whittle down the opponent's health pool to 0. That doesn't happen in this game series. Typically, you're just doing an ability check. Like maybe you're trying to get stealthily behind the opponent, and if you're successful, maybe you could backstab him and then move on. Something of that nature. If you fail this skill check, there might be a penalty, or even your quest will end. So these are utilized far more readily, and to pass a skill check, you take 2 6-sided dice, and if you roll equal or higher than your total number, so basically your base number plus the allotment that you did earlier in character creation, that would be your total number. So you need to roll equal or higher than that, and then you will pass your skill check. But hey, doesn't this book have experience points? That's like D&D, right? Well, it's not utilized as the way you would think. Basically, a single experience point is worth as a +1 to a bad roll, so it's a way to mitigate dice roll. You can't use multiple experience points to do that, you just could use one at a time. So for example, if I need to roll a 20 and I rolled 19, I could use a single experience point to change my value +1 to it to make it 20, and I will pass my skill check. So that's how these are utilized. So actually they will go down in number. And even though you do have hit points, these are not really utilized that often. As I mentioned, you're doing skill checks more often, so if you don't pass the skill test, you'll probably perish that way. I rarely ever get a hit point down to 0. In fact, I don't even recall it ever happening. Certainly it did not happen when I was playing through this game again. That's enough about the mechanics of the game book. So what do I think about this particular novel? First of all, it's actually quite well written. The characters are really full of life, really engaging to learn about, and because it's written by one of the co-creators of the Forgotten Realms settings, it really utilizes the area and theme quite well. Not only is there Daggerfall in this story, there is the Sword Coast, there is Waterdeep, the Lords of Waterdeep, and Flaming Fist Mercs, and a lot of other Easter eggs that you may know. I think just even from that standpoint, it's worth a read just for that. Despite it being well written, the adventure to be had is quite short, unfortunately. There are 203 passages in here and about 33 endings. So not too many paths to go on, as a lot of these paths actually will have some measure of success. In my 3 playthroughs, the first one I died because I had a couple of daddy rolls. The second playthrough, I got to the good ending, passage 203, without any trouble. And then my third playthrough, I went an opposite direction and I still got a good ending. And I don't even recall having a bad roll on my third playthrough. So very easy to go through. Some game books are difficult, hard to get to the actual ending, but there are multiple endings here that are good, and yeah, some of them lead to instant death. Another criticism, not necessarily of this particular book, but in the series as general, is the artwork is not as stellar compared to fighting fantasy, at least the original run of them. Let me show you some of the examples here. This artwork here, it looks almost like an unfinished sketch. And another page here, you can see some classic owlbears, and these are the only D&D specific monsters I could find. There are orcs and goblins and other such creatures, but yeah, this is probably the only D&D specific creature I came across. Despite all that, I still think this game book is still worthwhile obtaining. So certainly if you find it in a used bookstore, definitely pick it up. So let's talk about the plot now. As I mentioned, you play a half-elven ranger, and your job is to find the source of some orc raiders. And in your party, you have a barbarian scout, you have 3 fighters, as well as a mage and a cleric. And on your travels, you end up in a dead end bluff. And it's here that you realize your barbarian scout is not who he was supposed to be. He's actually a devil in disguise, a shapeshifter. So he has led you into a trap, and the hillside is lined with goblins, and they take out your party, and you're injured as well. But you get rescued and healed up by a barbarian fighter named Braggy. So he is your companion throughout most of this story. So your first real decision is, which way are you going to go? Are you going to head more deeper into the forest to find the leader of the orcs? Or are you going to head back in town and warn them of this devil shapeshifter, because he says he's going to go back there and cause more mayhem? So the title here refers to that devil shapeshifter, spawn of Dragonspear. So he's the main antagonist, and he is heading towards town, towards Daggerfall, and he actually resumes your shape. So that will cause some confusion and some interesting gameplay there. And he actually tries to befriend your love interest, the daughter of the Duke that runs Daggerfall. Now, no matter which way you end up going, you eventually do end up in Daggerfall and encountering the spawn and take out the devil. As I mentioned earlier, there are multiple ways to end up with a good ending, and even though that makes the game easier, it also makes the game less frustrating. I've read some game books where there is only a singular solution. It can be quite a chore just to find the right path, and you sort of end up cheating, just trying to look ahead which way you can go, and sometimes even with that, you can't find the true solution. So anyways, a pleasant read, and I do recommend it, and I love the setting. It's very interesting to live in this world through the eyes of one of the original creators. So that's essentially it. Thank you so much for watching, and keep on adventuring out there.